boat? Yes. Okay, you can go ahead and board. That way.
Yeah, you were just with it.
That's it?
Over the water, eh? Man. You married?
No.
No, eh?
University.
Oh, Maine? Oh, wow. You gonna study up here?
Y'all got any volunteers who'd like to move off of the right-hand side to the left-hand side? Try to level us out a little bit because we'll keep on the turn. Thank you. Okay. Before we get underway, just got a couple little safety things here. And for the most part, this creek's about this deep, so we won't need them. The other thing is, when we're leaving here, pull your elbows in. Sometimes I'll swing it around to get this turn made here, and then you get kind of close to them pilings there. So keep your arms and elbows in while we're going out. Coming in. Okay. I haven't seen Waldo out here all day, but you never know. This waterway we're going to be taking here is called Pepper Creek. It derives this name from Homosassa, which means where the wild peppers grow. They're not really peppers, they're holly bushes. But the Native Americans that lived here used to use the leaves for medicinal tea, and they used the berries for paint, for war paint and decoration. If you look overhead here, you see all of this mossy looking stuff hanging down. That's called Spanish moss. It's actually not Spanish and it's not moss. It's an air plant and it's really closely related to the pineapple. More about that after we make this turn. So you see those palm trees straight ahead of us? And there's another nice one off to the left here. Those are Florida state tree or sable palm, also known as a cabbage palm or swamp cabbage. And the top part of those trees are edible at the, right about where the leaves come out and a little bit lower down. But it kills the tree to harvest that, so we don't harvest them in Florida, that being our state tree and all. Now back to the Spanish moss. They used to stuff furniture and all with that, but it was treated. They'd boil it and kill anything living in it. But Henry Ford ordered a few box loads of it because it was cheap stuffing for his Model T seats, and he had them up there and it was untreated, and he shoved all of that moss into the Model T seat, and that led to the first recall in American automobile history, because the Spanish moss, if you don't treat it, is full of chiggers and mites and all of that stuff came out and was biting all the passengers, so they brought their cars back wanting the seats redone. Now, this park was developed by a guy named Bruce Norris. He had the wildlife park down here on Fishbowl, but he owned all of this property as well on both sides of this creek. Turtle's using a boat ramp. And when they finished US 19, it took all the traffic away from this wildlife park. That was in 1963. So in 1964, he went to the World Fair, saw them running pontoon boats, said, hey, we could do that. So he ordered some pontoon boats, came back here, built a visitor center and that hotel that you saw back there on the right. And he had this creek dredged out. You may notice that some of the banks are higher on one side than the other. Well, that's the spoils from this dredging. he operated the park for another 20 years until 1984, and he decided he wanted to sell it. Well, Citrus County acquired it, and they ran it for another 5 years. He had lions and tigers and hippopotamuses and monkeys and everything in that park. 1989, the state of Florida took over the park. Dang it. Take that spot. There's a floater. And they didn't want all of that wildlife, all that exotic animals. They only wanted Floridian native animals. So they adopted out all those animals, and they found a home for all of them except for one, and that's Lou the hippopotamus. Lou is a 6,000-pound hippopotamus that was born at San Diego Zoo in 1960. He was brought here in 1964, so he's 62 years old. Well, you wouldn't think turtles could climb that high, would you? But since they couldn't find Lou a home, the citizens of Citrus County petitioned Governor Childs to keep Lou here. So Governor Childs granted Lou honorary Florida citizenship so that he could remain in the park. And what you find there other than Lou are all animals and birds that are native to Florida now. If you look straight out ahead of the boat there, you'll see a wooden box on a pole, and there's a cone underneath of it. The cone is to protect that nest. That is a wood duck nesting box. And those wood ducks come in, and they fly to that box at about 35 miles an hour. They put their brakes on just before they get to it, and shoot through that hole at 2 to 3 miles an hour and hit the back of the box, drop right down on the nest. Well, the female will sit in there and hatch them eggs. And once that she thinks that they're big enough that they can come out and take care of themselves, she jumps out in the water, calls them out after her, and they look like fuzzy little ping pong balls when they bounce out of there. Now, as long as they're in the nest, they're well protected. The sad part is, once they're out of there, they're not protected from the predators any longer, like the snakes and the raccoons and stuff that cone keeps out. So a lot of them don't survive. But wood ducks nest in hollows of trees and stuff, and we're kind of short on that kind of environment for them here, so they put out several of these boxes. I think there's about 14 of them along this creek here. We're kind of waiting on the next boat coming this other way. All right, there's another island right straight in front of us there. That's called Palm Island. There used to be 2 giant palm trees on that island, but a windstorm took them down. So its namesake is gone at this time, but there are several other palms on there. Now, also, Bruce Norris put spider monkeys on that island because spider monkeys can't swim. So he figured it was safe to put them out there where they couldn't get off the island. Unfortunately, whenever all the trees started overgrowing the creek and everything again, they could jump real good. And they jumped off of the island, and they also jumped on the boats and everything coming by. And spider monkeys are notorious thieves, so they'd steal anything they could get their hands on, including sunglasses, hats, cameras, purses, whatever they could get. So now the present-day Monkey Island is over at the Florida Cracker Kitchen and Monkey Bar. It's at the end of Fishbowl Drive. Take that down in Old Homosassa, and the Monkey Island sits just off of the Monkey Bar there.
Yeah, it's like I swear it's an island.
And that is also spider monkeys. I hear they may even be descendants
where
from
we
here.
made that U-turn, instead of making that U-turn, you make a left, go down there. And then they have like a restaurant. They have a boat.
Now this creek is spring fed by some smaller springs, and it runs out into the other big spring area. Well, we have one magnitude 1 spring over there at the wildlife park. It has an underwater observatory built into it. It sets over 50 feet of water there, and it's a really great place to observe some of the Florida fish. Also, the manatees get in there, or in that area a lot too. So now that all the wild ones are gone, there are a few in there that have been raised by humans, and they can't take care of themselves in the wild, so they remain there year round.
Top of the water.
Now down at the end of this creek, they built a tram road across the end of it where it dumps out into the spring. So they had to add a couple of aquifers or aqueducts underneath of that tram road so that this water can dump out into the springs. And it goes and dumps in, and then from there it dumps into the Homosassa River. Then it goes another 9 miles out to the Gulf of Mexico. Now if you look out underneath of this pine forest here on the left and all, you can see how much undergrowth and everything there is there. Well, there used to be as much cattle in Florida as there was in Texas, maybe even more at one time. And the cowboys used to have to go out there. Okay, everybody wave at Captain Hugo. And they used to carry these short whips and make cracking sounds in order to get the cattle moving out of that underbrush, because the cattle couldn't see them, so it's hard for them to spook them. But that cracking sound managed to do the trick.
Need a drink?
When you get to the park, there will be a set of double doors you go in, and after you go through that, you'll throw your stamp at the other set of double doors. When you go through there, if you go to the right, you'll be going towards the hippopotamus. If you go to the left, you'll be going towards the underwater observatory. But those paths make a big loop through there, so it just depends on what you want to see first. Now see these trees sticking out over the water here, those are cedar trees. There used to be a huge cedar industry in Florida as well. They built cedar chests and other cedar furniture because of its anti-insect qualities. They thought it was a great tree to use for that. They also used that to make number 2 pencils out of. This concrete block on the right hand side that we're coming up to now, that was one of 4. They were going to put a water tower on there in the 1920s. This property was acquired to build a housing track on. But then they got those 4 blocks put in. The water tower never got put in, but they the 1930 depression hit, and he lost his funding for that. So it kind of remains undeveloped like it was before.
It's like animal, but like it's like a red. They can't be out there.
Is that all?
And just so everybody knows, remember the last boat coming back is at 3:30.
They're big too.
The park closes at 5, and the last tram is at 5:30. Now, if you look out here off the left, we're going to be making this left turn here anyway, but there's a bunch of turtles there. Yellow-bellied sliders. Might be a red-bellied slider in there too. But we also have soft-shell turtles and some snapping turtles around in here.
I'll look at them turtles go big.
Now, if you look straight ahead in this tallest pine tree off to the right here, you'll see an osprey nest. That island is called Osprey Island for a reason, because those osprey come back and nest there every year. And about 2/3 of the way up that tree over there is that nest, that tallest pine tree right there on the right. There is a setting pair of ospreys that are trying to hatch some eggs out there now. They may even be hatched and they're just waiting for them to get big enough to be fledged. The male comes back every January, starts working on that nest, and then about a week or two later the female shows up, inspects the nest. If she likes it, she sticks around. If she doesn't think it's good enough, she flies off. The male has to go and gather more material and work on the nest some more.
I wonder what's in the tree.
Now, there was a pair of wood ducks hanging out right here at this corner earlier. There they are right there on that branch, right down there. Now you see the size of that duck. Now when we make this corner up here, look at this wood duck nest on the left as we make this left-hand turn. And you'll see that hole in it. Remember how big that duck was, and remember how big this hole is. And see, you wouldn't think that they could get through there at that kind of speed without injuring themselves, but they do. To me, those ducks look about twice the size of that hole. Now, I mentioned that tram road earlier. That's it straight ahead of us there now. So we're coming up, getting pretty close to the other end of this trip. Yeah. And the tram runs right there next to the boat dock, so we're easy to find. When you take this path down to the road from here, there will be a concrete pole with a button on it. Please push the button before you cross the street, because that'll change the light and try to get some of these people to stop. If the light doesn't change, they won't stop. So don't step out in front of nobody till you're sure they're going to stop, but sometimes they don't anyway. As we make this last turn here, go to the dock, I'd like to get everybody to bring their arms and hands inside of the boat, please, because we're going to be getting a little close to some of this brush, and it's going to be a little tight fit for this boat in here. So. Hang on. Okay, everybody. You be parked whenever you're ready. Thanks for riding with us. And enjoy the rest of the park.